The phrase climate change kicked in the late 70s and remained for a while, but obviously it had lots of controversies associated with it. Plus, it's obvious that nobody lives in a global mean temperature, and a global warming of 2 degrees doesn't necessarily say what's happening locally in terms of climate or weather or rain or heat waves and so on. So the phrase was changed to climate change, which reflected better what was happening. But in the last few years, entities like the American Meteorological Society and so on have decided that the change in the weather patterns, like extreme rainfall events and extreme heat waves, have become so common, that so prevalent, that we have created essentially new weather patterns. So now human beings are acting like a forcing, like a change in solar radiation due to orbits, for example. We are changing the radiative balance so much that we are actually disrupting the climate of the Earth. So many people now refer to it as climate disruption, but obviously this has also political implications, because people who don't want to believe in climate change, or companies like fossil fuel companies which want to create confusion and disagreement, tend to say, look at this, they keep raising the alarm. But the fact is, we are going into warmer and warmer temperatures with more and more climate-related disasters. This is from the USAID report, Center for Research on the Epidemiology of Disasters. Looks at 2019, for example, 396 natural disasters, 11,755 fatalities, over 95 million people affected, and the cost of the damages is about 130 billion US dollars. Okay, so these are natural disasters, and we'll see what they are. For example, droughts, earthquakes, extreme temperatures, floods, landslides, storms, volcanic activity, and wildfire. Obviously, volcanic activity and earthquakes are not related to human activity, not directly anyways, because there are things like fracking which are now producing micro earthquakes, and changes in ocean warming can probably change pressures on tectonic plates and do things that we don't yet know. But for all practical purposes for now, we can assume they are not related to humans. But pretty much everything else, like drought, extreme temperatures, floods, landslides also not directly, but heavy rains do cause landslides. Storms, the total number of cyclones may not be increasing, but their most intense ones numbers are increasing. And wildfires, the disastrous wildfire in Australia and the one in US are directly attributable to climate in terms of their severity. Wildfires are not unusual, but how quickly they grow and how widespread they become are related to drying of the land. When you warm the air temperature, for example, it takes more humidity, so it will suck up soil moisture, which makes the vegetation dry as well, and also makes the droughts more severe, and what are called flash droughts. They can quickly grow from just a meteorological drought, which means small amounts of reduction in rainfall can quickly lead to droughts that feed back and make it worse and worse very quickly. Okay, so California, for example, has been growing a man-made drought now for a while. Okay, so if you look at the number of events in each category, disaster types, floods dominated here, with storms contributing a lot. In terms of deaths, again, floods are disastrous as well as storms, and people affected almost equally related to these hazards. Okay, so it's complicated question, right? Do you need to attribute these events to climate each time, or do you see the trend and decide that we better do something? That's what happens. So for the future, if we did manage to reach 2 degrees C warming, there are several impacts that are listed here. Again, there is uncertainty in these, so we have to be careful, but it's like risk management. These are the risks. How are you going to deal with it? Are you going to wait till it's too late, or are you going to start planning for it, right? That's the question. Highly populated regions such as the eastern and western United States, Middle East, South Asia, and China could experience heat waves worse than the most severe Russian heat wave of 2010. The Russian heat wave of 2010 was used for climate attribution exercise, and there were two answers: that the magnitude of the heat wave was made more severe by by global warming or climate change, but the probability of its occurrence was not changed. So heat waves occur in Russia, in those places. For example, this year again there was record warming in Siberia, parts of the Arctic Circle. The probability there is increased. So climate change does something called loading of the dice. If you have a fair dice and you throw it few times, the probability of any number showing up should be equal. But if you add a weight to it, you can make some numbers appear more frequently. So a drought that should appear every 50 years with some intensity may begin to appear every 10 years. So you increase the frequency. That's what climate change does. It's called loading the dice. Okay. About 600 million additional people will be exposed to dengue, chikungunya, and many other viruses. Okay. So we know these because the warming is taking these diseases to higher latitudes. For example, things like Lyme disease that are appearing in mid-latitudes US, it's because of the warming. Okay, and the lines to which mosquitoes go up in mountains is increasing as well because of the warming, for example. Moderate to severe widespread droughts and fires will occur worldwide. Already there is evidence that this is happening. Both rural and urban populations will be affected by air pollution, loss of property, and land degradation that reduces food production and contributes to volatile food prices. This is also, all these are already happening, plus there is a battle between using grains for biofuels as a solution to climate change and them affecting food prices for poor people. Okay, so all kinds of unintended consequences. Floods and storms will become more frequent and or more intense. So there is still a debate about the hurricane frequency of hurricanes, but the storms are now becoming more strong. There is something called rapid intensification because of the warming of the ocean. There is more energy available to cyclones because they get their energy from the ocean heat content, and they are intensifying very rapidly. Within 24 hours, the wind speeds increase by something like 55 meters per kilometer per second per hour, I think. You can look it up. So rapid intensification is happening because of ocean warming. Climate could reach a tipping point where forest recovery time increases to more than 55 months and the intervals between droughts increases to less than 55 months. If that happens, forests may not recover from droughts and fires. So droughts and fires may be natural events, but if their intensity and frequency is increased by climate change, then forests may have a hard time recovering after natural wildfires, which now become more frequent. For example, lightning can cause wildfires, but the heat waves, warm temperatures, changes in rainfall patterns can make them more widespread, and then next one may arrive too soon, and then the forest may not recover. Forests have been used to fire cycles, but if you increase them too much, they may not recover. Those are called tipping points, thresholds, and switches, and so on. Not easy to predict. There are lots of uncertainties, but as I said, the question comes down to looking at the evidence and then deciding there is a risk. How are we going to deal with the risk? Can we afford to wait till all the evidence is in to conclude that in fact it's climate change that's doing it, or should we start taking action? Those are the tough decisions to be made.